Theory, your source for everything Dynasty Fantasy Football, with your hosts, John Bauer,
looking to sell everybody price dependent,
Dan Lamagna,
too much dysfunction in Cleveland,
and Mitch Sorenson.
Well, it's hard to compete with excellence.
Thank you for joining us for another episode, a live episode of Dynasty Theory. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. And of course, I am joined by Dan Lamagna. That is at FF Coach Dan. And Dan, I'm sure you're going to tell us anyway, but please fill us in on your fantastic weekend, especially as a Cowboys fan.
Man, sometimes right place, right time. You know, I've been excited to tell this story tonight. So took the family to Dallas, Texas. I was there for some charity work with the Pancreatic Cancer Network. And then we got a tour of the Cowboys facilities. And on our final night Sunday, we're driving home after the Star at Frisco and then all you could eat ribs at this cow town. You know, I'm living the Texas life. Driving back to my aunt and uncle's house, and I just hop on Twitter, and there's Des Bryant posting he's going to be at 24-Hour Fitness in South Lake. So I asked my family, I'm like, where is this? And they said it's just a few minutes from where we were just at. So I knew it was 20 minutes from my family's house. And he's supposed to have a special guest there. And I'm thinking, do I leave my family? What's the odds I really meet Des? So we get back to the family's house. He tweets again. He goes, be there 8:00. Going to have two special guests now. So now it's in my head. And, my aunt's like, take the van, go check it out. My uncle's like, yeah, how could you miss that? I knew the kids were going to sleep. So I take the ride. I get there, a bunch of kids, they're selling, some of them had pictures and stuff. I asked the kid if I could buy one of Des, knowing he's, supposed to be here. So he sells me a picture for $20. I got a beautiful picture I'll show you in a little bit. And next thing you know, it's about 8:30 after about 40 minutes of wait, and he finally rolls up in a Bentley, parks in front of the gym, comes out. He goes, guys, we'll do all this later, referring to the autographs. He goes, come on in, we're balling. So I go in there. I didn't know if I was going to have to buy, a gym membership or a week pass, whatever it took. But everybody just follows Des. Gym people don't care. I go right to the gym. When you walk in there was like a race board calendar. And I guess you could sign your team if you were going to play. So, I don't know anybody there. I'm hanging outside with these 20, 21-year-old kids. And I says, hey, you need a player? And they said, sure. So I end up.
Dan, get to it. Come on.
With them. Hey, I got to build up the anticipation here. Next thing you know, Leonard Fournette and McCole Hardman walk in the gym shortly after behind Des. They end up playing. They win their first two games, and then they play our team. Yes, I covered Des Bryant. Yes, I scored 2 buckets, and I did not pull a hamstring on this night, although we did lose 7-11. But after that, I did end up, walking out of there with the Des Bryant, 2 Dan, throw up the X picture there, and had my, 15 minutes of fame, whatever you want to call it. But for the rest of my life, I could say I balled with Des, Lenny, and McCole Hardman.
How giddy were you the whole time? Like, I'm just picturing you like.
It would probably be accurate because he had this guy with him, like his entourage there, who's kind of running everything. And I got yelled at for taking a video at first or pictures without permission. And then, I explained I was from Pennsylvania. And then at first, he was signing for the kids, but he wasn't signing for everybody.
And then you pushed the kids out of the way.
Yeah, he tackled the kids.
I didn't have to go that far. I did, if I had to, but I pulled out the old man cave picture and I showed his guy with him there, the picture of the man cave. So he knew I wasn't like some memorabilia guy. And I says, I need this for the man cave. Des was looking over his shoulder and then he signed for me and I lived happily ever after.
That's awesome. And it's a story that you're going to have forever. And you being the diehard Cowboys fan, and of course, you're going to throw them into this episode. And I'm sure when we get to him, Shane's going to have an issue with that. But before he yells at you, we are also joined by Mitch Sorenson. That's at DynoMC on Twitter. Mitch, I'm assuming you didn't have as an exciting of a weekend as Dan had.
No, but my house finally closed. So I'm all done with that headache. And so it's finally closed. And so it's great news right now.
That is awesome. So just in time for free agency. And that's really what the premise of tonight's show is all about. And before we get into it, Mitch, throughout the offseason so far, we've been in startups. We obviously have existing leagues. Have you done anything, without naming specific players, to really focus on free agency and try to get ahead of any changing values?
Yeah, it's something that we mentioned last week and the week before, but I went out, I did my tiers immediately after the season ended. And I went out and updated them because what I was noticing is a lot of people were still using the same rankings that they were using the previous September. And they weren't adjusting them at all. The rookies weren't included. And I think it's still the case today, as we've seen in some of our startups, that they're just using old rankings when you should be out and have your own rankings at this point, especially because it's almost April.
Yep. No, absolutely. Especially when you do tier rankings, well, any rankings, you have to constantly adjust. If you're sitting there looking at things from September, it's completely outdated. It's like if you would go to your local convenience store, buy a fantasy football magazine, and expect that to be even remotely relevant. So getting in touch with the changing values, it's definitely something you should be doing when you're playing Dynasty. And we are joined tonight by the man, the myth, the legend, Shane Manila from Dynasty Trades HQ, and he's also a contributor for Fantasy Pros. If you're living under a rock and you don't follow him on Twitter, it is at Shane is the worst. And that handle always makes me chuckle a little bit, Shane. But welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you on with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on. I try to live up to that handle. I kick a lot of puppies. I see babies. I shove them when no one's looking.
It's like whenever Dan goes to get Dez's autograph, he's pushing people out of the way, like George Costanza in that episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah, that's terrible, Dan. I can't believe you were kicking little kids. And, I heard there was even a kid in a wheelchair you pushed down a ramp. So that's pretty messed up. I like that you and Leonard Fournette are like, it's your buddy now. It's Lenny. It's Lenny.
He goes by Lenny. He owes me money from a couple years ago in DFS, Shane, when he got kicked out of the Bills game. So I could call him Lenny.
I got you. Yeah, definitely.
They're best buds. They go way back, all the way to Monday. So
right.
All right. So Shane, before we really get into the meat of the show, how did you get involved as a fantasy contributor? So obviously you're a co-host of Dynasty Trades HQ. You're involved with Fantasy Pros. What led you down that path?
Oh, it was a hard journey. Many years ago, I want to say 4 years ago, roughly, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I'm terrible with time. When you get to be my age, shit happens. Stuff happens.
We'll edit that part out. That's all right.
Darn it. To heck and back. Anyway, about 4 years ago, I'm playing on my phone while I'm driving, and I see a tweet like, hey, do you want to write about fantasy football? And I'm like, I could do that because I've read other people's stuff, and it's okay. It doesn't seem that difficult to me. I could do that. So basically just responded, started writing very badly. I read the stuff that I wrote, my first articles now, and it's depressing. It's depressing that I put that in the public sphere where people could pull them out and make fun of me. But luckily, I kept writing, got a little better at it. Now I think I'm pretty decent writer now. Just kept grinding away, started doing rankings, constantly on Twitter, harassing people and just interacting and interjecting in conversations that had nothing to do with me. And eventually I was made a part owner of Dynasty Football Factory, which is, that's where I started writing and started doing the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast. And, excuse me, I just had to step away from Dynasty Football Factory a couple months back and, because of some life stuff. And now I'm just all about doing the podcast and having a lot of free time and, write when I can, whenever I feel like. Don't feel obligated to do it now, but I'm starting to miss it a little bit. I have to be honest with you.
You're doing some good things, Shane, unlike John, who for the second week in a row has disappeared from our podcast, except for that was towards the end of the show when his laptop battery died. I don't know what his excuse is this week, Mitch.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing, but we'll just keep going with it, and he'll probably just pop back in. But what drew you to Dynasty in the first place?
I played redraft for years. I'm old. And I've said this before. I think I'm 41. That sounds about right. And I played redraft from the time I was about, 15 years old. Oh, hey.
Nice you to come back.
Yeah. My laptop didn't die this time.
No, my story was that boring. You were just like, oh, come back later.
Mitch and I were enjoying it anyway.
You guys kept rolling again. I don't know what's happening.
Shane was just telling us what drew him to Dynasty, if you care.
So yeah. Many years ago, I played redraft, but redraft, it always felt like a date that end it without sex. Like, I knew there was more there. You know what I mean? Even if I didn't know what it was at first, so 20 years ago, I didn't know what dynasty football was. I don't even know if those leagues existed, but after every redraft season, just like a date without sex, like I should be doing more, like something more should come of this. So, I ended up actually stopped playing fantasy football probably 10 years ago. Cause I was like, this doesn't really pop for me anymore. Whatever, you win and then you go away. And then I don't know, man. Someone told me about dynasty leagues, and I said, that sounds like the Madden franchise mode. That is amazing. I want to do that. And I joined one league, and I think the first league I joined was probably one of Ryan McDowell's hyperactive leagues. And then I immediately joined like 15 other leagues because I was like, this drafting thing is really fun, and I get to keep these guys forever. Little did I know at the time that I would immediately trade everyone in sight and continue that trend throughout my career. Just everything about it, it's forever. If you really want it to be, it's year to year. You're thinking 2 years ahead, just like you do like a real football team. It's so much better than redraft. Redraft, like I said, you play and then you're done. I think the skill level, that you definitely need skill to play redraft. It's just a different type of skill, and you need to be able to look to the future. And it's just, there's more strategy involved, and there's more nuance to it. In week 6 of a redraft.
Hey, Shane, move your head over a little bit. The logo's in the way of your face. There you go.
Actually, I had the logo tattooed on my forehead for the show.
Sorry, this is our first show here with the 4 people here on StreamYard. So growing pains, and the fact that I got bumped off my own internet and had to connect to a hotspot, which I apologize.
So I'm just going to keep doing this all night.
There you go.
Just bob and weave. But yeah, you make some great points, and I still take part in redraft. I enjoy it. But Dynasty, there's just so many elements to it and so many nuances and the changing values, and especially with Superflex, and if you incorporate tight end premium, everybody could go into a draft with a completely different strategy. Whereas redraft, it's like, okay, here's your top 36, and you're going to be pretty close from league to league. But yeah, Dynasty, it's a completely different beast. So free agency, it starts next week. It's one of the big items here in the offseason for the Dynasty players. And the first topic that I want to hit on, and Shane, you're our guest of honor. We're going to start with you.
I'm sorry, I actually have to cut in. So it's my 11-year-old son's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday to him.
He demands birthday wishes from you 3 and anyone listening.
All right, well, you have my birthday wishes. Happy birthday.
All right, so I'm going to have to let the kid listen to the podcast now. It's Chase. His name is Chase.
Happy birthday, Chase.
Happy birthday, Chase.
Chase is on the case, man. Happy birthday.
So if anybody else has any birthdays they want to shout out, we'll give it, just make sure you give us that extra download.
So I can say this because, I made him. So he's Jewish, and he has no athletic aptitude whatsoever, but he is definitely going to be an agent one day. So that's pretty awesome. So let's get into... Is he
playing in Dynasty leagues yet?
Not yet, because, again, he doesn't like to watch football. So that's the one thing. I don't know how I'm going to get him to be an agent if he doesn't want to watch, but I'll explain it to him. Hopefully by the time he's like 18 or 19 and he's heading off to college, he'll understand that, that he has to watch the game too to be an agent.
I'm having those troubles with my 9-year-old Shane. So when you have a breakthrough, please keep in touch.
I got bad news for you, buddy. It's not coming.
Yeah, my 8-year-old's the exact same way. Much rather play Fortnite than watch football.
Well, no, that's awesome. It's good to know that I'm not the only failure as a father. That is great.
You guys got to figure it out, and you can start like a 2nd-generation Dynasty Fiends League.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Anyway, I'm sorry. So I co-opted your show so we could wish my son a happy birthday. So anyway.
No, absolutely. No, you're good. So, and I'm sure your son, Chase, I'm sure he's excited for free agency. It's right around the corner. And let's start with you, Shane. Let's talk about a few guys that are upcoming free agents that you believe are going to see the biggest rise in Dynasty value.
All right. So I'm not very original, so I'm sure a bunch of people have already named these guys, but I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson, as Etan Mosier likes to call him, Robbie, but his name's Robbie. I looked at his ADP on DLF for February. It's 106 overall. it's hard to imagine a scenario where he doesn't end up in a better situation. There's not many worse coaches, offensive minds than Adam Gase. Sorry, I had to move the mic so that my face isn't covered by the tattoo.
That is the only reason people are tuning in right now, is to see your face. So get out from behind the logo.
Look, the women are going to start flocking to this show. You know it's going to happen. There's going to be two of them that probably find it by accident and go, what is wrong with that man's face? Good Lord. They said he was good looking. Anyway.
They already left the chat.
Yeah, no, they immediately like, this isn't erotica. This is the opposite of erotica, whatever that word would be, non-erotica. So Robbie Anderson, I can't imagine a situation that would be worse than what he saw last year. You know, your starting quarterback has a kissing disease for however long he had that. Adam Gase is your head coach. The offensive line wasn't very great. The wide receivers on the team, other than him, really, there's no reason to pay attention to him. Like, if the Jets want to throw it 15 times a game to Jamison Crowder for 36 yards, I'm sure defense is fine with that. So, hey, Ray.
Wait, I meant to click this comment here. So somebody says in the chat, I love how Shane leans into the mic like it's a Senate hearing. Well, Shane has the floor still.
I'm just saying, look, when you've been to court enough times, you want to make sure that the judge or whoever hears you clearly, okay? But yeah, Robbie Anderson, I think, like I said, he's got a 106 ADP right now. Say he signs with the Eagles, that's going to soar up because, he's that missing piece that the Eagles need. He fits perfectly. Indianapolis, it's just anywhere, really. There's not many situations I could think of where it'd be a downturn from him other than like Tampa Bay.
No, there are a lot of good landing spots you see for wide receivers. Green Bay, I think if he went to New Orleans, people would be excited about that, even though we're not sure what's going to happen with Drew Brees beyond 2020. But yeah, wide receiver 52, according to DLF ADP, you can get him for nothing in startups. And, you talk about all these different metrics and statistics for wide receivers. Air yards is a big one. And Robbie Anderson, he's always at the top of the list. So I don't think that changes if he goes to a new situation. I love Sam Darnold. And Mitch, we just had a conversation about Sam Darnold in a group chat earlier tonight. But based on last year, Robbie Anderson was in a terrible situation for his skill set to succeed. So I think, Shane, just like you said, anywhere he goes, he's going to be a prime candidate to see an increase in dynasty value. And I think, I hate to say it, Dan, cover your ears, but Shane, your Eagles, it's probably the premier spot for Robbie Anderson or any other deep threat. I like Carson Wentz a lot from a real life and fantasy perspective. So Robbie Anderson to the Eagles, I am so happy I have several shares. Now, Dan, I want your thoughts because let's forget about the Eagles for a second. Robbie Anderson as a player, I know you're all about dysfunction and you want him away from Adam Gase and the Jets. Do you also think wherever he goes, he's going to see a spike in value in dynasty?
Yeah, man. Shane was reading my mind with the anti-Adam Gase sentiment. You've heard me in past episodes just bash the Jets, and I could definitely put my bias aside on the Eagles. I mean, that's a little side conversation Shane and I will probably have later. But love Wentz. I love what the Eagles have done in recent years with that offense. And Robbie Anderson's a hot commodity, probably one of the few hot commodities at the skill positions on offense this offseason. So it's a lot better than breakout Rage's comment there, wishing Chase and Amari Cooper to the Eagles. That hurts right here. But Robbie would be there's nowhere to go but up. Get him out of the Jets, please.
And Mitch, I think you have to agree here as well. I know you were also on the Robbie train with me heading into 19, but I think that was because of the Sam Darnold love that we share. But again, based on what we saw last year, you have to like Robbie Anderson's prospects moving forward anywhere else.
Yeah, his value is definitely going to go up. But as far as having him on my team, I'm going to have very few shares of him, just like I have of Brandon Cooks and anyone else, Deshaun Jackson back when he was playing a lot. Just that prototype of a player. I end up not having him a lot on my teams just because of the boom or bust aspect of it. As John makes fun of me all the time, but I always end up with 15 slot wide receivers and no really good ones on my team, but that's just a failure that I have when it comes to building my dynasty teams.
But
that's okay. We're not going to slot shame you here.
Isn't Robbie Anderson?
What I did there?
Isn't Robbie Anderson the one guy with breakout potential of this free agent class?
Well, no, because there's another guy that I love. But real quick, yeah, Robbie Anderson was 18th in air yards last year. Just jumped on Josh Hirschmeyer's airyards.com. I believe that's what it is. Whatever. Everyone knows what it is. Just
That's a
type in air
fantastic
yards.
website, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
airyards.com.
It's definitely, I got to be honest with you, websites that I love that are free, that Pro Football Reference, Sports Reference, because it's just like, you jump on there and you can get lost for days. Like, oh, well, what's over here?
It's such a great database. And what is it, Mitch? Sharp Football Stats?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's Sharp Football Stats and like Sharp Football Analysis. I think there's 2 different ones now.
I use the Sharp Football
Oh.
Stats, and it's fantastic because you can see the different efficiencies and effective ratings and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, Robbie Anderson, now, Mitch, let me ask you, because you said that he's a guy that you're not going to have on many teams. If he moves to a good situation or any other situation, basically, which is going to be better than the Jets, is that where you're going to be looking to sell?
It's not even that I'm going to sell him because I don't have any shares of it.
Okay,
Is the
okay.
problem. And so I'm not going to buy him at the elevated price. It's just I end up having the Jamison Crowders and Julian Edelmans instead of the Robbie Anderson type.
Okay, fair enough. And then we have one more guy. Shane, take it away here. And you're digging even deeper here for this guy.
Yeah, so it's Bashar Perryman, man. And I've actually, I wrote an article about him like, I don't know, 4 years ago, whenever, going into his second season that he played. And I just saw a breakout coming. I was wrong, very wrong at the time. But he's another guy that if the Eagles don't want to spend the amount of money that it's going to take to get Robbie Anderson, which is apparently $15 million a year, that's fine. Give Bashar Perryman $22 million over 3 years. We saw what he could do last year as the number 2 option and as the number 1 option during the final 4 weeks of the season. He balled out. He averaged 20.3 fantasy points a game from weeks 13 to 16, that beautiful playoff run. And he scored at least 13.7 points every week. He had that one monster week where he had 37 points, but he's a speed-sized freak. He battled injuries for a long time, and he's kind of bounced around now, but assuming the guy can stay healthy and find a stable situation like the Eagles for 3 years and 22 million or 25.
You just want everybody to go to the Eagles here.
Look, I just want one free agent, right? One, either Robbie Anderson or Bashar Perryman, and then just like Justin Jefferson or T. Higgins or CD Lamb out of the draft. I'm not greedy.
That's it.
And the beautiful thing about the Eagles is people will say, oh, well, they still have Alshon Jeffrey and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And, yeah, that's about it, actually. And Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson hasn't been healthy since the Reagan administration. Alshon Jeffrey, the Eagles might actually just eat a $25 million cap hit just to move him because he's a cancer as well as being washed. And nothing I saw from J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year makes me think that the guy's ever going to be anything more than a role player. So the Eagles could take on 2 guys. But, yeah, if they can't get Robbie Anderson, which I'd understand at $15 million a year, give me some Bashar Perryman. And he's another guy. There's multiple places. Again, Green Bay, like you mentioned. If they don't want to spend $15 million on Robbie Anderson, then, spend some money on Bashar Perryman and let him do some damage. And, it'd be nice with Devontae Adams eating up all the hard coverage and Bashar Perryman just blowing it up over the top.
So I have 2 things. One, we talk about these guys that are free agents, and if they move and they go to a situation like Philadelphia, Green Bay, maybe New Orleans, like I mentioned, we expect their value to rise. So we want to get in now before we see that spike in value. Are you guys seeing it where people are very reluctant right now to move anybody that's a free agent because they automatically think, oh, my guy, he's on my team, he's going to move to a better situation, I'm going to see that spike in value? Because that's what I'm seeing personally.
I don't think you're getting a bargain, but I mean, if you really believe and want Robbie Anderson, I think you could probably give up some of that new draft capital as the league's rolled over and get him. I think it's a matter of if you believe in him. I think Mitch makes a point. He's not going to overpay to get a Robbie Anderson. But Bashar Perryman, I like that Shane brought him up. And, Shane, I know you said before, you had another receiver. I just think the audience will probably be split on Perryman. I do agree with you. You know, he broke out Baker Mayfield 2 seasons ago. He flashed at the end of the year, and then he just did it again when he had the opportunity last year. You know, I think unfortunate for him, he was buried behind Godwin, Evans. You know, even though O.J. Howard didn't produce, he got a lot of snaps. So there's not enough balls to go around. But his landing spot is very interesting. I really hope he goes to a team that believes in him and wants to utilize him, and he could break out.
Shane, because you brought these two guys up, I'm going to direct this to you. Do you think there's the possibility that as dynasty players, we're going to fall into the trap, and we do it time and time again? I think a lot of us did it with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year. He got into a good situation. His value went up a little bit, and he didn't meet the expectations. Do you think that could happen with a lot of these free agents, and not necessarily pointing to the Eagles, but just to any team? They go to a situation, we think, oh my goodness, they're going to produce, their value is going to spike, I'm going to pay a premium. Do you think we're going to fall into that trap? And I feel like to an extent we do it every year. Shane, that was to you.
That was to me. For some reason, I thought it was to Dan, and I was about to be like, Dan.
No, that was to you.
Jesus Christ.
You're just showing off that beautiful face of yours over there.
I'm sorry. I did. I started looking at myself in the camera. See, this is the HQ. I make sure on the Dynasty Trades HQ, I never look at myself on the camera because I get mesmerized, and I'm like, good Lord, that's a good looking man. I'm not, I don't swing that way, but if I did, I would totally get with myself. I don't know if that would count as incest. I think it would. Anyway, yeah, we're definitely going to fall into that trap. And it's funny, I just happened to be reading ESPN online, and I shared it with you guys, the worst signings, the best and worst signings throughout the last 5 years, 5 off seasons. And it's littered with guys that we swore up and down we're just going to, Ladarius Green, he was going to be the next superstar at tight end. Kenny Britt, who feels like it was 10,000 years ago, just in 2017, he got 5 years and $32 million. And, he was going to be the number one in Cleveland, and he died. Not literally. Terrell Pryor, I don't even know. He's out of football at this point, right?
He just got stabbed here during the season, actually, in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
By his girlfriend. He got stabbed.
And that wasn't the first. Was that the first time he's been stabbed? I feel like he's been stabbed before.
I don't know if he has, but it was big news here in Pittsburgh.
I mean, I know a lot of his teammates did not like him, so it would make sense if he was stabbed before. Anyway, Adam Humphries from last year got a big contract, and I don't know if he had more than 30 receptions. And I'll tell you what, I'm not looking it up because I don't care. Adam Humphries had about 6 points a game last year. We were talking about Terrell Williams. He's going to go to Oakland. He's going to be that deep threat on the other side of AB. He's going to have a great year. Oh, guess what? AB's gone. He's going to be that number one wide receiver there. Well, Darren Waller ended up actually being the number one wide receiver there, especially at wide receiver. We're going to overvalue them, and they're going to underperform. It's just what happens. It's not as simple as plugging better player on a better offense and everything being better. Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. last year, before the season, you would go, well, that's amazing. Odell Beckham Jr. is probably going to have 1,800 receiving yards. Look what he did with Eli. Well, look what he did with Baker. So it's going to happen. So if you see a spike in value on Robbie Anderson, sell him. If you can get a first for Robbie Anderson after he signs with whoever he signs with, sell him. You'll be able to buy him back for a second if you really want him later in the year. Bashar Perryman, you could probably get him for a third right now when he signs with that perfect destination. Sell him for a second and buy him back for a third again, the end of the year, because they'll probably perform better in year 2, but not in year 1.
Yep. It's so difficult for these wide receivers, especially, to go to a new team, a new situation, new playbook, and really be productive in year 1. And we see it so many times. But still, as dynasty owners, we see a player go to situation A, and we think, oh my goodness, they're just going to be a beast this year. And rarely does it play.
And John has frozen.
Okay, so John, I'm going to take over hosting duties of this show.
I like
it. Dan,
you're hired.
There was something you were talking about that I already forgot, and it's not you, it's me. I have like Swiss cheese brain.
Receivers, Cowboys, Eagles.
Yeah. Oh, Amari Cooper. Now, see, I didn't put Amari Cooper on my wish list because that's just over the top. Like, I don't see the Eagles going out to sign Amari Cooper for 110 million, but I do hope that he ends up anywhere with Dallas. Also, screw the Cowboys. John's back.
If I lose the internet connection one more time, I'm going to throw something through a wall. Anyway, so a good deep dive there, Shane, on Robbie Anderson, Bashar Perryman, and whatever the heck you guys just talked about, whenever my screen went black. Dan, you have a guy that you want to talk about. And I had to nix your first guy because we're talking about upcoming free agents that we believe are going to see a spike in dynasty value. And of course, you had to be partial. You said, I'm going to talk about Dak. Dak's like quarterback 5. He's not going up at all. So who is your second choice? And to our listeners, no surprise, it's a Dallas Cowboy.
All right. Well, going back to our free agent conversation of outside of the quarterback market, which we're really intrigued about, there's not a lot there. It is thin. I think, Shane's already, I'm going to try to keep it G-rated here. Shane's already, what's the word I'm looking for?
Eviscerated, made sweet, passionate love to.
The barrel.
Yeah, like he shot his load. So
Stuck it in.
Why not? After Robbie Anderson and Bashar Perryman, I mean, we're deep diving, especially after Bashar Perryman. So I had to dig deep here. And yes, I'm just coming back from Dallas. I was on the high. You talked me off the mountain of Dak Prescott, which I just like kind of ribbing that one because everyone bashes them, but then they always draft them before you could get them. And I think his stock's going to continue to rise as I see finally a coach that may be competent. And the offense was decent. They made strides last year under Kellen Moore. But picture an offense of Cooper. He's coming back, Shane. Gallup. Potentially Cobb. If not, they lose Cobb and they re-sign another slot receiver. And then, you have Zeke still in the backfield. But the hidden hero of all this in free agency, I think, is the re-signing of Blake Jarwin. Because I get this feeling that Jason Witten's not coming back, as much as that breaks my heart. In the Cowboys locker room this weekend, his nameplate's not there as he was contemplating retirement. I'm not getting that warm and fuzzy feeling. And when you look at Blake Jarwin, if Witten's gone, that's 63 catches that he had in his last 2 seasons playing. I know the year he was retired, for some odd reason, Jason Garrett wanted to split time with Jeff Swaim, but it's Jarwin's show right now. If you watch those guys, his athleticism pops off the chart. And I look at Blake Jarwin the same way I do as Bashar Perryman, and he just needs an opportunity. For some reason, it'd be 3rd and long, and Jason Witten, who couldn't get any yards after the catch, as much as I love him, was on the field and not Blake Jarwin. His blocking went up. You look at Pro Football Focus, his blocking grade went up last year. I think he could stay on the field and block, and then could be an outstanding tight end in fantasy football, So that's my guy there in the thin free agent class. I think you could get Blake Jarwin really cheap and be surprised with a starting tight end who's going to get extra yards after the catch. His receptions, his touchdowns, all his stats should go up.
I like Blake Jarwin a lot. And the startups that I've taken part in, I've targeted him, whether it's tight end premium, start 2 tight ends, whatever the situation is. But Mitch, I'm going to throw this question over to you because you've been quiet for a little bit over there, just, gazing off into the sunset. There are so few holes, especially offensively, that the Cowboys have to fill. I am a little bit worried that the Cowboys do target a tight end. And I know we're not thrilled about this tight end class. It doesn't have the standouts like Hawkinson, Fant, Ingram that we've seen. But are you concerned at all that maybe they bring a tight end in? And if it's for certain that Witten is not coming back, maybe it's time to sell Jarwin prior to the NFL draft? What are your thoughts on that?
My biggest worry with Jarwin's, honestly, I think Witten's coming back. But the Cowboys are really going to be close to, depending on how this collective bargaining agreement goes, of being really against the cap for the next few years. Because if they re-sign Cooper, like Dan thinks, they get Dak, they get Jones on the defense. And I think they have an alignment coming up too. Is it Lionel Collins? Is that the next guy up? I can't remember, but they have one more offensive lineman ready to go. But they're going to be so close to the cap that I don't think they could bring in a Hunter Henry or Austin Hooper at $10 million a year. I just don't think there's any way that they're going to be able to afford to do it. And so I love Jarwin going forward, but I really do think Witten's going to come back for 1 year. He's going to do another Larry Fitzgerald, and he's just going to keep playing 1 year and then another year and then another year.
I would be shocked if Witten came back this year.
I'll meet in the middle of that. If he does come back, I think he does come back, but he's used different because McCarthy wants to, get this team over the hump and win football games in the playoffs. And Jarwin's on the field at third down when it counts. So I don't think Witten gets all those snaps he did in years past, and I think you'll still see a spike in Jarwin. Now, if Witten does come back, it does eat into it a little bit, so there's a little bit less luster on this take. So we have to see. But Mitch makes good points with free agency. Dallas does have some salary cap challenges. They're not going to be able to afford Austin Hooper or Hunter Henry or any of those guys. I don't even think they bring Byron Jones back. I think they get a corner in the draft possibly with pick 17 or trade up a little bit, depending what they want to do. They're looking to sign Robert Quinn too. They consider him a high priority. So there is only so much money to go around.
But if they do draft a tight end, no matter who it is, and I know we're not thrilled about this class, but let's say they go after a Troutman or a Hopkins or whoever, that's going to cut into Jarwin's, not just his value, but his production. You don't think so?
We talked about the tight end class last show. It stinks. And I think if they do, that tight end's going to take time to develop, and it's only going to be depth. They have Dalton Schultz on the roster, who's a blocking tight end. So they still have another blocking tight end for situational football. And I think whoever they do sign would just be a depth piece and not a target or receiving option. In the fantasy football world, Jarwin's your guy. In real life football, they might bring someone in to help them and get depth, but I'm not really worried about competition other than how much the Witten would factor in.
Shane, what are your thoughts? Because you look like you're ready to jump through the screen right now.
No, I'm just looking at their cap space, and I'm on Spotrac, if that's how you pronounce it. If it's not, someone correct me. Fun fact about that.
I always said Spot Track.
Spot Track.
There's only one T, so I don't know.
For no particular reason, I always added an R and made it Sport Track. And Google would continually go, "Did you mean?" And I'd be like, "No, I know what I meant, but I was wrong." Anyway, so they have $73 million in cap space. So you look at it and you're like, "Holy shit, they're fine. They're fine." But yeah, then like, oh wait, they have 47 free agents, including their starting quarterback, Amari Cooper, and Jones, who's gone. So I don't think they're dipping into the tight end market. And honestly, I don't even know what tight ends are out there this year. There's none that I like better than Jarwin. The tight end class is atrocious unless Chase Claypool decides to actually become a tight end, which he should with that speed. I heard Ryan McDowell say that today, and I was like, thank you, on a Dynasty Blueprint, I think. I can't see them bringing in anyone. Jarwin looked so much better than Witten, and maybe it was
explosive. He was explosive.
Maybe it was just watching them on the same field. Like, cause you'd see Witten, he gets past, and it takes him an hour and a half to run 2 yards, and then you see Jarwin with a 40-yard reception, and they immediately take him off the field after that. But I love Jarwin. Yeah, he's another guy I'm definitely targeting. I'm not worried at all that they're gonna do anything to replace him. One thing I would be concerned about, though, is just the targets. Gallup, you would assume in his third year, would see an increase if Cooper can actually remain healthy all year, because he was battling injuries every game last season, apparently. It sounds like McCarthy knows that they should target Zeke more than Garrett did last year. There's conservation of targets. At some point, you just run out of available targets unless your defense is an absolute sieve and or your quarterback throws 30 interceptions.
And then that's the point when we bring Jameis Winston in and he cures everything except OJ Howard, apparently. So I have a few guys, and I'm not going to go into detail here because, again, I have multiple guys listed, but these are guys that if they're signed by the right team in a certain situation, I am looking to sell immediately. And it starts at quarterback: Phillip Rivers, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Tannehill. Phillip Rivers, and we're talking super flex here, one quarterback leagues. We don't really care about these guys too much. But Phillip Rivers, if he gets picked up by the Colts, I am looking to sell him for anything I can get. I don't even think I could get a second right now for Phillip Rivers in a super flex league. So he's a strong hold. But yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, it sounds like he might be looking to make a move here, especially with Drew Brees coming back, them putting the first round tender on Taysom Hill. But, a lot of question marks there. And Ryan Tannehill, now it's like, okay, do the Titans, even though Tannehill had that terrific run, do they sign him long-term? I don't think they do. And then I have one tight end. I hated on him all last year, but Eric Ebron, he's coming at tight end 30. If he signs into even a remotely decent situation, I'm looking to ship him off, and I'll get anything I can take. So the next topic I want to get into, guys, So we're talking about free agency, and it doesn't have just an impact on the actual free agents, but it's the players that are returning to the teams where these free agents might go. So Mitch, let's start with you. Who's one player that's returning to their team that you think is going to see the biggest drop in value based on impending free agency?
Well, since we've only talked about pretty much the Eagles and the Cowboys so far, we might as well bring the Lions into it as well, right?
Yep.
But I was actually going to bring up Marlon Mack before this, but then I started thinking about it a little bit more. Is Carrion Johnson, I think, is in the exact same spot that Marlon Mack was last year. What with Carrion Johnson, he played 8 games last season, 10 games in his rookie year. And even when he's on the field and healthy, although he's looked good, he's only gotten at most 50% of the snaps. They never give him more than that. And right now they have Carrion Johnson, Bo Scarborough's probably going to come back, and Ty Johnson, but nothing big. And every report coming out of Detroit right now is they're either going to draft someone or they're going to bring in someone like even LaShawn McCoy or just an older vet like that.
Kenyan Drake came up recently.
Yeah, Kenyan Drake too. I don't think they will just because of the cap space, but they are going to bring someone else in. And right now his ADP is running back 23, and I think that might be the high point for him moving forward. Unless his ceiling would be some miracle happens and he gets an Aaron Jones type of year to where Stafford stays healthy, he catches a whole bunch of touchdowns, and he gets this boom season and you could sell him immediately after. But more than likely what we're going to see is another Marlon Mack scenario to where he's a good running back when he plays and you want him in your lineup, but you can't get any value for him moving forward. I mean, we're in, I think, the 11th round of a startup right now, and Marlon Mack's still sitting there.
It's funny that you brought up Aaron Jones, because I was going to make the comparison strictly because same division, and then the fact that 2 seasons in a row he didn't finish the year, and that was one of the big things coming into 2019 that people knocked Aaron Jones for. I'm raising my hand right now because I was one of those people, and Aaron Jones ended up being a tremendous value, running back 2 for the season. But Carrion Johnson, yeah. So you clearly see him as a sell before free agency in the NFL draft.
I do. I think Aaron Jones is the outlier here, and I think there's probably 10 other guys we could point to that they never reached that ceiling, and they only drop from here on out.
Just in terms of picks, because like we all know that Carrion Johnson, he's not getting a lot of value in return in trades. What would you get? What would you be looking to move him for in terms of 2020 picks?
If I got an early second, I'd be really happy, because you're still getting the pretty prime wide receivers in that area. And later than that, I'd probably just hold. But if I get an early second, I'd sell him in a heartbeat.
Okay. Dan, Shane, what are your thoughts here on Carrion Johnson heading into free agency?
Oh, okay. Well, see, I'm not used to being polite, so this is all very weird for me. Usually I just cut people off.
Even from a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, and it's odd. It's very strange. But I don't like Carrion, but I want a first for him. After his injury last year, I said, all right, I'm done with this guy. Like, it's just because his injury history is extensive. It goes back to high school, like not just college. I was looking into it last year. He literally had injuries through high school. Like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. But like Mitch said, Aaron Jones was the outlier. And also there was flashes from Aaron Jones where you saw, okay, if this guy gets a lot of touches, he's going to be special. Carrion, he has had a player here or there where you're like, oh, this guy can really be special, where he could be special. But Aaron Jones was just more consistent with it. But I'd still want a first for him, and I'd probably hold and hope that he can stay healthy for 4 or 5 games to start next year, and then sell high on him. But if you're the Lions, you have to bring someone in, right? You saw what happened last year with Ty Johnson and Paul McKissick, JD McKissick, and guys off the street. I don't even remember. There was like 15 Bo Scarborough, and you know what I mean? Like, you can't be, there's no way you can win in the NFL. Just look, I know running backs don't matter, but when you're getting guys literally off the street, then you got to do better.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
I agree with wanting a first for him, just based on upside. He looks good when healthy, as Mitch says. I think in a dynasty Mitch and I are in together, we just saw Carrion Johnson in a late first go for 1.02, and did not agree with that trade at all. But I would want to get a first for him. And I hate to say it, but Bo Scarborough kind of looked decent last year. And I think he is in the Lions' plans in some capacity. So
I think that's a very limited capacity.
It takes a luster off Carrion a little, though.
That's bad planning. Like if you're going into a season and you're like, look, guys, I know Carrion gets hurt a lot, but we got Bo Scarborough right behind him. Although Matt Patricia isn't a very good head coach, and I'm assuming he's in charge of personnel. So maybe he does think that's a good plan.
It seems like the plan from what we're reading. So there's upside there, JB. I agree you have to get a first for him, but I'd be happy to trade him.
Yeah, and Mitch, you broke my heart with the Marlon Mack, man. He's another one. I mean, I should look at the sheet to see if one of you guys were going to name him. But yeah, if they add anyone of consequence there, it's just going to kill his value because they just refuse to use him in the passing attack. Like they just are adamantly like so against it, even though he actually could catch a little bit in college. Like that was one of the things that, was an allure to him when he was a sleeper pick in his rookie drafts was the guy, he wasn't out there, spread out wide, but he was good enough that he could play all three downs. And Indianapolis is like, no, we have Nyheim Hines. We don't need to put Marlon Mack on the field.
Isn't it so weird how coaches will do that? Because you look at Josh Jacobs, him coming out last year, his biggest thing was his pass catching ability. He could block, and then he gets like 15 targets on the year. It's absolutely crazy that coaches will be like, no, we got Jalen Richard. We don't want to put the really good rookie out there. We could pay Jalen Richard again.
It's incredible. It's trying to be smarter than the room. That's all it is. And, the ego on these head coaches. And I understand you have to have a massive ego because, you are in charge of a pretty big program when you're a head coach and you've busted your ass to get there most of the time, unless you're a Shanahan or a Scott Turner or whatever. You got there because your daddy was a coach. But for the most part, a lot of these guys had to work their way up through high school and wherever. So I understand the ego part, but sometimes just understand you don't have to outsmart people. Like just leave the best player on the field. Just do that. But yeah, I don't know.
And that best player is probably Bo Scarborough. Shane, you have a few guys here. So, and I really like your list here, but these are guys that you see as having the biggest drop in value due to free agency. So run through your guys here.
Yeah. So one thing I like to do, and I probably stole this from someone because we've all stolen something from somebody, but looking at the archetype of players, or the archetype. I don't know how to pronounce that word correctly, but I like to say
you're good with archetype.
Archetype, yeah, because that makes you sound smart. But then when you don't pronounce it correctly, you're like, oh. Any wide receivers that were the wide receiver ones on their team by default last year, guys like Terry McLaurin, even DJ Chark, who I really, really like. These guys aren't wide receiver ones. I don't think so, at least. I think, they fell into a perfect opportunity. Good for them. They took advantage of it. But DJ Chark, Day Westbrook was hurt a lot last year. Chris Conley is a physical freak, but he's not consistent enough to do a lot of damage every week. So DJ Chark he just fell into a perfect spot where he saw the majority of the targets. Terry McLaurin, who was the second leading wide receiver on the Redskins? Does anyone have any idea?
Was it Sims at one point?
Sure. I'll just, yeah. Okay.
It could be anybody.
Yeah. Is it Trey Quinn or did we give up on that dream?
No, but he missed a lot of time last year.
Yeah. And then who else was out there? Harmon, right? Harmon had
he was also injured.
Yeah, he got at least 3 catches last year.
So, I mean, and it's not to disparage those players. They did a great job in the situation they were given. But you would hope those teams are looking to add legitimate wide receivers to the roster. And if they are, it's going to eat into their target share as it should. And they might even add guys that are going to overtake those two as the wide receiver ones on their rosters.
I like that. And it's like you said, it's guys that kind of fell into their wide receiver one role. So definitely be cautious. And with Terry McLaurin, I mean, even DJ Chark as well, there are questions at quarterback, even though I know Mitch and I, we really like Gardner Minshew, Dwayne Haskins. It's very iffy. But these are guys that, while they were productive given the opportunity, maybe they're going to have some rough times here in 2020. And just like you talk about guys falling into their wide receiver one role, I want to bring up a guy that's kind of very he's parting the seas here. We have guys on the left and guys on the right when it comes to this guy, Henry Ruggs. I think the only way he's productive is if he lands into a situation where he's the only guy. What are your guys' thoughts real quick? Because it's not the show notes. I like to throw a curveball every once in a while. And I know Twitter just absolutely blew up over the weekend. At one point I was going to mute the word Ruggs, but Mitch, what are your thoughts?
All right. So he is the guy that I'm going to root for most coming out of this draft season now, because everybody's killing the guy. It's just like Daniel Jones last year, DK Metcalf, Josh Allen the year before. We all think we're absolutely brilliant when it comes to these rookie talent models that we have in watching
Speak for
tape.
yourself.
But the fact is we miss on these guys. And when everybody is so adamant that no, this guy isn't going to be good in fantasy, and a lot of people think he's not going to be good in the NFL. But there's a reason why he's going to go in the first round, and he's probably going to end up being the first wide receiver taken. He's going to get opportunity, but he might end up being a guy like we brought it before, like Robbie Anderson, Deshaun Jackson, Brandon Cooks, those type of guys, to where he could end up winning you $1 million on DraftKings, because he could have that boom week where you get 40 points out of him. But it's going to be hard to pick that week out. But I'm completely okay, and I hope everyone keeps bashing him so I could get him in the second round of startup drafts.
And that's exactly why I watch The Bachelor, so I get better at DFS. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of our little tangent here on Henry Ruggs. And then Shane, you have a few other guys here. I like your comment here. I'll let you take it off with it, but David Johnson is dead.
Oh yeah, poor David Johnson. He's dead as AF. If Kenyan Drake resigns with the Cardinals, like, he's just done. I mean, he looked done last year, and okay, it was a back injury. Okay, has he had surgery yet on that back injury? Because
I haven't heard anything. No.
Yeah, I loved it. Not that love. Look, I don't want to question the toughness of a football player, because honestly, they could chew me up and spit me out and probably deal with things that I would cry over. But when a guy or production problems are blamed on injury, I want to see surgery, because that, unless you're having surgery, then there was nothing wrong with you. Okay, your back hurt. And guess what? 28-year-old guys with back problems, they don't get better. Like, your back's not going to get better. So, the only reason the Cardinals haven't cut him or won't cut him is because of the dead cap. So if Drake comes back there, he's just dead. And if he doesn't come back there, if Chase Edmonds is back there next year and healthy, I still think David Johnson is mostly, he'd be like zombified at that point. If Drake comes back, he's definitely a corpse.
Just like you said about David Johnson, the only reason he's still there is because of the dead cap. They actually lose additional money on top of his contract this year if they cut him or trade him. So he's showing up making X amount of millions. Why can't I fall into a situation like that? I could say I have a bad back. I'll take that money.
I think I could do that part. It's the getting to that part, that producing and playing football and being a physical specimen. In a good way. I've been called a physical specimen, but not in a good way. So,
yeah, unfortunately, I don't think any of us here are in position to get to that point. The bad backs, maybe.
Yeah,
but
Mitch maybe. Mitch could be a model. He's a good-looking guy. I don't know.
Please don't feed his ego. Come on.
I'm just saying. He said he's married, right? Are you married, Mitch?
I am.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
I'm always available.
Oh, hey.
His wife does his hair.
Got to keep the options open.
I like it.
All right, Shane, you have one more situation here, and to put that cup of water down.
Sorry,
or maybe it's water. I don't know what's
Jack and Coke.
Okay.
It's good. My kid's not listening at this point of the podcast anymore, so it's cool.
No, he got his birthday wish. He's been long gone.
Yeah, he could care less. He should be in sleep. He's 11 years old. Come on, that's ridiculous. Go to bed. Anywhere Tom Brady or Andy Dalton land, if you are an outside receiver, a deep threat, you're dead. I was looking up at looked up on the Pro Football Reference the intended air yards per target, and those guys are really two of the worst in the league out of the available free agent quarterbacks. And real quick, when did Pro Football Reference get all these stats? I didn't even realize they had intended air yards and stuff.
For that, I use the airyards.com or NFL Next Gen Stats. I've never used Pro Football Reference for air yards.
I don't know. I just stumbled onto it last night or the night before, and it was incredible. But anyway, they're bad at deep throws. Now you could say maybe, or their percentage was low, and just the intended air yards per target were low. And you could say Tom Brady, it's because they didn't have any deep threats, right? They had Antonio Brown for one game. I think they had Josh Gordon at some point last year before he was suspended, before he was traded.
Briefly, yeah. Yeah, their deep threat was Phillip Dorsett.
But you know what? Phillip Dorsett is actually a good deep threat. Like if you got a guy on your team and that you want to throw the ball too deep, you got him. And Andy Dalton did get a few games with John Ross in there last year. So you would think that his would have been higher too. But yeah, I'm just going to, besides the fact that they're both past their prime, like Tom Brady's washed. I know that everybody keeps telling us he's the GOAT, but you're not signing Tom Brady from 10 years ago. You're signing Tom Brady today, who's 42 years old or whatever he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like Andy Dalton. I just don't think he's going to be a boon to any outside or deep threat receivers. So hopefully it's not going to be him and Robbie Anderson or him and Bashar Perryman package deal somewhere.
You stole the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, hopefully wherever Robbie or Bashar Perryman go, Andy Dalton and Tom Brady do not follow. And of course, I have a few guys here to put my hat on. Now, these are guys that, whether it's actual or just perceived value, I think they're going to lose value here in free agency. One's actual value, Jacoby Brissett, because all the talk about is, if you're losing your job to Phillip Rivers, you probably should have no value anyway. So sorry, Jacoby, but you're completely off my board. And then Derrick Henry, I can't see the Titans signing him to the contract he wants. And with the usage he's had going into a new situation, most likely running back 8 seems a little steep for me. And I think he's going to lose value. And we've already been seeing it in startups right now. He's slipping a little bit as this offseason has progressed. And we got a little further away from 2019. Now, these next two, they're based on narratives. If Jameis Winston leaves Tampa Bay, Mike Evans is worthless. That's what we're hearing, right? So I'm getting him wide receiver 10, wide receiver 11 in some startups because they think, well, the deep ball threat, Jameis Winston's going to be gone. I'm buying Mike Evans. If he's going to slip in value, I am buying him based on that narrative. And one last guy, and Dan, cover your ears. If Amari Cooper does not go to Dallas, if he doesn't go back to Dallas, and let's say Philadelphia as well, because I think that's a great landing spot for him, I do think he's going to lose perceived value. He's currently going wide receiver 8. I would be shocked to see him continue around that threshold. Any thoughts there before we move on to the next topic? And Dan, you look upset.
I'll hop in. There's a lot of ifs there for me. I think there's a lot of chess pieces that have to, fall in place for us. I definitely see the points on Brady and Dalton, and we talk about Brady and a deep threat. But when he had Antonio Brown for 1 week, he put on a clinic. I mean, I don't even think they practiced together. He just kept throwing it up to him. They were scoring touchdowns.
Is that the game against the Dolphins?
It was.
Yeah, I'm just throwing facts out.
But I mean, you give him a Antonio Brown type, an AJ Green type. I just give him some stud receiver, and I think he's just smart enough to put up some stats and overcome a little bit. Dalton, I definitely would think would need a little bit more help. So I think you have to see how that all plays out, JB. But I want to throw you one curveball myself that I would just love to see, and that's Taysom Hill. He goes back to the Saints. He just becomes another year older, and I would love to see someone with a Greg Roman-like mind be creative and take a chance on this kid and see what he could do and run a Ravens-type offense with Taysom Hill. And, boy, he'd be a fantasy gem. Every time we've seen him throw, I mean, he's got an arm. He could run. He could do some things.
All 20 pass attempts throughout his career? It's
limited. But, if you go somewhere and you get some intel from a Saints coach that says, hey, this kid could play. He could throw. Take a chance on him versus going in the direction of all these recycled quarterbacks of Ryan Tannehill and Winston and his 30 interceptions and a 40-some-year-old Phillip Rivers. Why not take a chance on a guy in his prime that is just an athletic freak and could do incredible things? So, again, just thinking outside the box instead of the cookie-cutter NFL way of, okay, we need to do this because this is the hot guy on the market. I'd love to see a team take a chance on a Taysom Hill. And I think Derrick Henry is the Titans.
So 2 things real quick. You're going to knock Jameis Winston for his 30 interceptions. Those 30 interceptions are actually more pass attempts than we've seen Taysom Hill in his entire NFL career. So yeah, 30 interceptions, not great, but I would like to see a little more from Taysom Hill. But the fact that they're putting a first-round tender on him, and I don't know if that's actually come to fruition yet, but that's at least the conversations being had. He's not moving.
Most likely not. And again, to my point, I would love to see an NFL team strap a set on and take a chance on the guy versus you're not going to win a game. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with 30 interceptions from Winston. Again, he had all the weapons in the world. Tannehill, you're going to really invest in Tannehill. You're going to invest in Andy Dalton, Phillip Rivers. They're the guys everyone's talking about. I like Taysom Hill.
Well, they're all trash.
I just shared a comment on the screen, and that's what everybody's thoughts are. Taysom Tebow.
Possibly.
Well, so let me ask you this, Dan. Tomorrow, Jerry comes out and he says, look, we've decided we're going to go forward with Taysom Hill because we like what we saw out of those 20 passes. We appreciate what Dak has done for us, but we're going to move forward with Taysom Hill. How do you feel about that? Him leading your team?
Terribly, because we have Dak Prescott, so there's no need to go in another direction. But if you're a team that doesn't have a good quarterback, and our category right now is guys returning to their teams and losing value. Hill goes to the Saints. He's a gadget guy, and he's irrelevant for us, other than a best ball league maybe, and he has those 1 or 2 breakout gadget weeks. So I'd like to see him go somewhere else and have some value versus, Phillip Rivers.
I think his value is all imaginary, though. I mean, it honestly is. It's the most vapor of value that I've ever seen in my life, because the guy he's a trick. He's an outlier. He had an outlier season where he scored some touchdowns. Most of the next year, it's going to go back the other way. They're going to try to run him at the 2, and he's going to get blasted back, and we're going to go, oh yeah, that's why this. Or they're going to let him attempt the pass, and he's going to get picked off, and we're going to go, oh, that's why he was the 9th string backup. In my estimation.
And
definitely could be right.
And Dan, we're talking about guys that could lose value. Taysom Hill has no value in the dynasty community right now. Nobody's investing in him, paying a premium and saying, oh, this is the guy that's going to lead my dynasty team, whether it's one quarterback or super flex. It's not happening. So that's the reason I don't like Taysom Hill in this category, in this topic. But I've been knocking your guys all night.
It's a curveball, JB. It's a curveball. He looked good versus the Vikings in the postseason.
He looked like the greatest football player of all time in that game. I will give you that.
Dan's going to point to one game and say, this is why we need to give this guy the money. So if Dak Prescott doesn't sign with the Cowboys and Taysom Hill's there, Dan's going to be the first one buying his jersey, apparently.
Hey, Breakout Rage has it right. I would be doing a jersey burning video if Dak or Cooper leave. This would be very hard for me.
Well, we'll broadcast that live on the air, or you could donate it to a charity. But I know you're clearly joking about the jersey burning. So one last topic here. We want to talk about some rookie landing spots. Not so much specific players, but if a rookie gets drafted to a certain team, it's just disastrous. And we're going to lower them down our rankings and reevaluate their value. And Dan, let's start with you. What's a situation, I think you have a few here, that comes to mind?
Yeah, and Shane, I have a little different take than Mitch and John, which you could probably already tell. These guys have drafted in 8 million dynasty leagues, and I commend them for that. So I always take a little bit different of a coaching angle when I look at landing spots. And for me, I just have some teams that concern me, and I'm going by track record and history. So if there's some rookies that we're excited about, I get concerned when they go to the Bengals. The Bengals have relied on the draft. They don't sign much in free agency, and they haven't drafted well in recent years. So if one of these guys that we're, a little bit higher on but uncertain, they go to the Bengals, I'm going to question that a little bit. If they go to the
let me ask you a question, because you have your teams listed here, and I'm going to jump in. So the Bengals, let's say AJ Green does go somewhere else, even though it sounds like he might be franchised or they might extend him, which I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. Let's say AJ Green moves on and you're relegated to Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd, who I love, and John Ross, who can't stay healthy. Let's say they get a big-time receiver, and now you have Joe Burrow. You don't think there's some excitement surrounding that?
There is. I'm just concerned they'll draft the wrong receiver. We're talking about Ruggs or Rieger or Ruggs and CD Lamb or whoever they could get. If they were a team to get one of those big rookies, I'd be concerned. Now, if they can't get one of those rookies and they say they do lose an AJ Green and they have Boyd as their leading receiver, Now I'm a little concerned, does Joe Burrow have the supporting cast he needs? Because the Bengals aren't going to go out and sign any free agents because their owner just absolutely refuses to sign free agents. Again, they rely on the draft, similar to Dallas has in years past, but Dallas has had some good drafts. So the Bengals just concern me. Unless they can start drafting good and return to the Boomer Esiason Super Bowl days, I'm not too confident. So that's why they're on the list. The Redskins are another team that concerns me. We talked about them when we previewed them. Just the Daniel Snyder era has not been good for the Washington Redskins. So if a guy goes to Washington, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm a little more optimistic with Riverboat Ron. I just hope he has the support and ownership really, does let him take control and he can put some good people around him. Maybe the Redskins turn the corner a little bit. Giants, I'm concerned with Dave Gettleman. A little bit of his decisions have been really suspect. Will he mesh with this new head coach? I think the Jaguars are in a rebuild. They concern me a bit what direction that they're going in. We talked about their salary cap situation. Everybody they draft, they seem to trade. And the Jets and Adam Gase, the Browns relying on analytics. Those teams right there, there's a long track record of like a decade now of just poor decisions.
I have two things real quick on those last two teams. The Browns, I'm not concerned because of dysfunction. I'm concerned because you have Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. I don't want to see a wide receiver go there. And I certainly don't want to see a running back go there. Let's say Kareem Hunt comes back and they tender him. And then you have Nick Chubb, obviously. So that's a crowded backfield, crowded wide receiver core. So that's the reason I'm avoiding. I don't want to see a rookie go into that situation. But the New York Jets, we're assuming Robbie Anderson's going to leave. Hopefully that offensive line improves a little bit. I don't mind a wide receiver that goes to the Jets. I'm a big Sam Darnold fan. I don't know.
And I guess when I stay going to these teams, it's not that I'm going to shy away from them if they come to me at the right landing spot in a draft. But if it's between a guy that goes to one of these teams versus a guy versus in a better situation, I'm going with the better situation and avoiding that track record nightmare.
Well, the one good thing about Adam Gase is he's probably got, another season in New York, hopefully, right? They should fire him after this year, right?
Yeah, hopefully 2 or 3 games, but yeah, he should be gone after this year.
Yeah. I can't imagine they would keep him on after another, what I'm assuming is going to be a 6-10 season. But I do get your point there, because what if he goes 8-8 and they're like, hey, we're the Jets. That's like the Super Bowl. So we're bringing him back again. And he runs off a string of those of just mediocre performance after mediocre performance. He's going to destroy Sam Darnold and then any other offensive weapon that ends up there. So I can definitely see the Adam Gase one because he does scare me. And yeah, anything Daniel, the Washington team is any team that, like you said, has a sustained history of just making terrible decisions. Yeah, they do scare me for fantasy, but I end up usually disregarding it anyway and hoping that the talent's gonna get over that, and knowing that, look, it's Dynasty. Hopefully that coach will be fired before, this player's rookie contract's up and he can ball out the final 2 or 3 years of it.
I think we're all hoping that Gase moves on. And I just got a message from somebody. Of course, I keep getting disconnected. And they said every time I get disconnected, I just sit here shaking my head before I disappear. I don't know what's going on, guys. I apologize. But Mitch, you have a slightly different situation. And while Dan, he's hooked on his dysfunction, yours isn't so much dysfunction, but maybe a little bit of a crowded situation.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I've seen a lot of people bring up that the Cardinals have room for a rookie wide receiver to come in. I don't see how unless it's a first round draft pick, if they get CeeDee Lamb, Judy, Ruggs, that'll be a little bit different. But if they end up getting Tyler Johnson or Duvernay or Michael Pittman, someone like that, I don't see how they see the field. They still have Christian Kirk. Andy Isabella didn't even see the field at all last year. And you got him, you got Keyshawn Johnson, you still got Fitzgerald. There's just unless Kyler Murray goes out and throws the ball 700 times next year, there just isn't going to, even if they're on the field, there's not going to be enough opportunity for you to ever want to put them in your lineup. Keyshawn Johnson was on the field for most of the snaps last season. You couldn't start him because he just wouldn't get enough opportunities. And I think that's going to be the exact same thing that happens to any rookie that comes in, because they're not going to be playing over Kirk or Fitzgerald in the slot. And I just don't see any rookie on the outside being targeted more than what they will in the slot.
I'm seeing so many mocks from people in the not fantasy, related to the NFL, that have a wide receiver going to the Cardinals early in the draft. I've seen CeeDee Lamb mocked to the Cardinals, and it just blows my mind because they have so many other holes that need to be filled there, especially that offensive line. I don't know. I completely agree. I would hate to see a wide receiver go to the Arizona Cardinals. Dan, Shane, any thoughts there?
I'd be okay with it. I think I want to see them run those 4 wide receiver sets that we thought we were going to see last year. And I think after he got a look at his wide receiver room, realized, oh, I can't do this. Keyshawn's actually not very good. So I guess I can't really use him the way I want to. Larry Fitzgerald, he's a solid 80-year-old man. Christian Kirk, when he played, he was fine. But outside of that, like what did you have? Man, throw CeeDee Lamb in that offense. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I mean, they do have so many other holes. But for fantasy, I'd be perfectly okay if they want to go 6-10, but score 600 points next year and put up 500 passing attempts. Dan, to you.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, I think it depends who that wide receiver is. It's Tyler Johnson. We talked about him. We don't really like him. If he gets someone who's just average, he might get lost in that shuffle. Andy has Isabella. I think he didn't see the field till maybe the very end. He might have had one game where he did flash. He had a big touchdown, I think, at the end of the season, if my memory serves me right. Maybe there's a little bit more in the tank for Isabella. Fitzgerald's like Jason Witten. He's just going to take the snaps and you're going to get what you're going to get. But it's only for one more year. So again, it is Dynasty. So if they do get someone with a lot of upside, I do like Michael Pittman, that, Mitch. So if it's a Pittman kind of guy, maybe it's a sleeper. So I think they need to invest in a receiver because, again, you're only getting one more year of Fitz. Johnson shouldn't be in the picture. I just think they didn't have anybody else. So I'd probably lean a little more Shane's way as far as I'd be okay with it, but I think you just have to temper your expectations in the short term.
All right, so that's probably one of the only situations that we've been a little bit divisive here. I'm
sorry. I'll try to be more divisive. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but Mitch's hair is stupid.
Wait, you just said you loved it a few minutes ago.
Well, I'm trying to be divisive now, so I'm just doing hot takes now. Dan, you're bald. You're not fooling anyone.
Got what I've got, man.
See, that's why I wear a hat, so nobody can rip up my hair.
If I could have found a hat, I would have worn it.
Next time. So Shane, I like the situations you've picked out here, and a lot of them, all of them here, they relate to running back and the possibility of a running back by committee. So these are spots that you don't want to see a rookie running back land.
Yeah. So Denver, Philadelphia, Buffalo. Those are the first 3 teams that popped in my head, and not in that order specifically. I'm a Miles Sanders mark, so I get very upset anytime the words RBC, BBC, whatever, running back by committee are mentioned around him. So I'd be real triggered if the Eagles were to go out and say draft A.J. Dillon as a 2-down back. I would be very upset with that. If Buffalo were to draft for some reason DeAndre Swift, if Denver drafts any running back within the first 4 rounds, it's just no, thank you. These are teams where, if they add another running back, it's not only hurting the rookie, it's hurting the guy that's already there. It's pigeonholing them into a role that, into a 2-down back at best. Or, a situation where they're taking turns like they did in Denver last year. Where at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh, well, this is a Royce Freeman drive and this is a Phillip Lindsay drive. Like, no, thank you. I don't want that. Not for me. Thank you. I don't want Sanders to be limited to the pass catching back who gets 8 carries a game, and AJ Dillon's getting 15 carries a game for 45 yards, and you're just hoping for a touchdown out of one of them. I think him, Singletary, and I guess Lindsay, right now they can have enough of a role where they're fantasy viable. Sanders could be a running back 1. I think Singletary could be right outside that, and Lindsay could be an RB2. You add another running back into those backfields, and I just give up and I die a little bit. And LC Dean, suck it. No, the Eagles are awesome.
So yeah, you talk about those running back situations right there. and let's say all three of them land one of these rookie running backs, you lose value for 6 running backs potentially there. And I'm sure all of us somewhere along the line have somebody from those teams rostered on our dynasty team. So definitely situations we want to see, no rookie running backs landing there. Before we sign off, we're going to introduce our first theory throwdown. I love alliteration. I love these cheesy little things. So what I'm going to do, and you guys have not had the luxury of seeing these players, you're all going to have 30 seconds. If you try to go beyond your 30 seconds after I stop you, you will be muted. I have that capability here on StreamYard. There's a little shout out to StreamYard. But I'm going to go through 2 players. I want you to tell me who is going to be more valuable after free agency. Okay? So I'm going to flash it up on the screen here. And then, Mitch, we're going to start with you so you can be prepared. We're going to go Mitch, Dan, Shane for both of these, okay? All right, so Mitch, ready?
Yep.
We have Hunter Henry at tight end 8, Austin Hooper at tight end 6. After free agency, who has more value? And go.
Austin Hooper, just because he doesn't have the injury background that Hunter Henry does. And I think he's actually going to get paid a little bit more and go to, I really think he's going to end up in Green Bay. I think he's going to end up there. Maybe he ends up with the Patriots, and I like either of those spots for him.
Okay, Mitch says you can keep your 14 seconds because I'm going to wrap it up quickly.
That's right.
All right, Dan, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. Who do you think has more value after free agency?
Hunter Henry. I think he's just a better overall tight end, more athletic. He finally stays healthy, and I'm still holding a grudge as Austin Hooper let me down in the Pro Bowl DFS contest. So give me Hunter Henry.
So you have to hit unmute to talk. Okay, so that's how it works. So everyone's ceding their time to me. First of all, I just want to say that I clearly forgot about these 2 when we were talking about the tight end free agency class. So this makes it, John's disappearing, so I get as much time as I want.
Keep going.
So damn it. These 2 make it a very strong tight end class. I don't know what I was talking about. I'm clearly drunk. I don't want to say Austin Hooper, but I will say Austin Hooper. He's actually the more athletic if you're looking at player profile for whatever that's worth. Hunter Henry's injury history is a little scary. I'm going to go with Hooper only because I don't think he's going to get what he deserves on the open market and is going to end up back in Atlanta. And Matt Ryan has already shown an affinity for him. Austin Hooper's shown that he can be the number 1 option on a week, or the 2. Even with Calvin Ridley progressing there, they're still going to be missing running back targets with Devontae Freeman gone.
All right, so we're going to go. All right, so we have 2 Hoopers, 1 Henry, and of course I disappeared once again. I this has never happened, and I'm sure you're not buying it, but I promise it is not.
That's why we brought Shane on. He's taking over every time he fell out. So
that's fine.
Okay.
That's like, we're up to what? I think we're up to 5 times now. And that's the magic of editing. Whenever this goes out on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you're never going to know that I'm not here. So last one here. Mitch, we're going to start with you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Who is going to have more value after free agency? Kenyan Drake at running back 28 right now, or Kareem Hunt running back 31 currently? Ready? Go.
Oh, this is a good soapbox for me. So it's definitely Kenyan Drake because I think they're both good running backs, but I think Kareem Hunt is only in the league because the Browns were the only team that were going to bring him in. I don't think he showed enough last season for any team to give him a big contract. So he's going to go back to the Browns. And I think Drake is actually going to go back to the Cardinals, or he's going to get a bigger role somewhere else. So definitely Kenyan Drake.
All right, Dan, what are your thoughts here? Kenyan Drake or Kareem Hunt? Who has more value after free agency?
I'll stay on the Kenyan Drake train. I'm just anti Kareem Hunt. You'll never see him on my roster ever. I think he's too much of a risk. I don't think anyone will give him a feature back role anymore. I think he's not a guy you want in your locker room, just my opinion. And I'll take Kenyan Drake. I think he found a home in Arizona. I think he fit their scheme. He flashed. He looked good. They just got to settle that contract. Kenyan Drake here.
You guys are making this easy. Shane's the only one pushing the envelope here on time. Shane, over to you. Kareem Hunt or Kenyan Drake?
Yeah, we haven't been divisive enough, but fuck, heck.
The magic of editing. You're fine.
Kenyan Drake's, out of the two, he's the only one that's going to get signed somewhere to be a starting running back. Kareem Hunt, like Dan or Mitch said, I don't know. I was looking off yonder. Hunt's not going to get signed for that. No one's going to, because it's not just the money. You're going to have to give up a draft pick compensation with the, whatever tender, and that's the problem. If he was a unrestricted free agent, I would take Hunt because he's a much better player than Kenyan Drake. But I got to go Drake.
All right, so we have 3 Drakes. I would also be on Drake, and then for the tight ends, I would be on Hooper. But just theory throwdown. Hopefully next time I won't get disconnected 17 times during a show and I can sit here and shake my head in disgust. I swear it never happens. So Shane, again, we had at least I had an absolute blast. I'm sure Mitch did. I don't know about Dan, the Philadelphia-Dallas rivalry. I'm sure he'll be nice though.
But he's got a Rocky banner in the background. He's got like all types of Rocky stuff going on.
Listen, you're going to learn with Dan.
He's a huge Philly fan. He loves the Phillies too.
Well, then we can bond over that.
He is a bandwagon fan because I think he likes the Yankees. He likes the Georgia Bulldogs.
I don't like the Yankees.
Lakers.
You like the
Georgia
Lakers?
Bulldogs is a bandwagon. No one likes Georgia. I've liked them since Herschel Walker. Lakers, you got me. Duke, you got me. But no bandwagon. I like the Cowboys since Tony Dorsett. Shane and I are around the same age, so he should know who Dorsett is. You may not, Mitch. I'm not sure.
No.
Mitch is a handsome guy. I got to tell you, I take back.
I appreciate it. I do.
Trashing his hair because he's got really wonderful hair, and I'm very jealous. I'm not going to lie to you.
Shane, he's a married man. Easy over there.
Nah, look, whatever. He said he's available, so I take that for what you will.
Options. Got to have options.
But again, Shane, thank you so much. We always try to keep these episodes short, but again, I look at the clock. We're about 80 minutes in here. Time really does fly here on Dynasty Theory. Shane, what do you want to let our listeners know? What are you working on? What do you I know you have the pod. I know you're doing Fantasy Pros. Any other things that you want to let the listeners know?
Man, I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty much low key now. Really, the only thing I got going is the podcast, Dynasty Trades HQ, with my guys, Michael Sipes and Jeremy Brown. That's kind of our baby. If 3 men could have a baby, it'd be like 3 men and a baby. That would be it. And nothing else really. It's kind of nice. I got nothing going on really. My podcast. So just, if you don't subscribe, go subscribe. Hey, become a patron, like I yell at everyone. I appreciate you guys having me on. I had a good time too, man. This is really fun. I really like that Dynasty Throwdown. Wasn't expecting it. I like that. I'm gonna listen to that every week and kind of root for the underdog. And more divisiveness. So you definitely gotta like really get players where their ADP is like right next to each other and really have guys yelling at each other. Like I want to see Mitch and Dan was just like yelling and like spit coming out of their mouths. So I really went off on a tangent there. So yeah, listen to Dynasty Trades HQ. At some point I might get back into writing more often. And if I do, read that. If I don't, whatever, listen to the podcast.
And again, if you've been living under a rock, Shane, you're a fantastic Twitter follower. Twitter, you're very active on there.
And John's gone. So I'm going to just pick up for John again and say, I want to again thank our guest, Shane, at Shane is the worst. The Mitch, wonderful hair. Dan, not so much hair, but he's like me. We're going to tough it out, and we don't need fancy hair to be good looking. We're ruggedly good looking. Mitch, what do you got going on?
Absolutely nothing now. That's the great thing is I've been moving for the last month, and it's finally all over with. I could actually look forward to just chilling on the weekends and not boxing up all the time. But Dan, you got a final thought? I'll just let you guys get us out of here.
So if you guys need anything, any advice from Des Bryant, Leonard Fournette, or McCole Hardman, I play basketball with them. So just, hit me up anytime. Shane, first time meeting you. It's been a pleasure, man. And thanks for being on the show.
I would like Lenny to come through next weekend. And maybe we could play some like 3-on-3 against these local kids that have been just talking trash to me. And Yeah, that's it. I don't know how we end the show now because he's gone. I don't know if we have to upload something. I don't know what we do here, guys.
I have
your show
idea.
now,
He
Shane,
does
man.
all this stuff, really. So
Look, I don't edit my own podcast, and I've told people reach out to me, but like, hey, what audio system do you guys use? And I say, I have no idea, none.
John, take us home, man. Close us out.
So
All
what
right,
happened
anyway,
to that
as
hat,
I was
dude?
saying, Shane, you are a fantastic follow on Twitter. You're always very interactive. Anybody that's in the chat here, you can see my hat has come off. I am extremely irritated. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us for another episode of Dynasty Theory. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Theory FF. Have a great night.